So the following Sunday service, good morning everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. And today we're going to be talking about spiritual discipline, the importance of it, why it's necessary for our spiritual development. And the ideas discussed in this Sunday sermon were from two books, one by Donald Whitney, The Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life, and the other by Dallas Willard, The Spirit of the Disciplines. So the key verse in this whole presentation is this, from 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. Have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly. In another version or interpretation, but have nothing to do with worldly fables, fit only for old women. On the other hand, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. So, discipline, the whole concept of discipline, has a negative connotation. So, why is that? Well, first of all, when discipline has no direction behind it, it's regarded as drudgery. Okay? For many Christians, they think of spiritual discipline as drudgery. It is the fact that they have no spiritual direction that makes it drudgery. Prayer, meditation, fasting all seem to many believers to be unclear in their benefits. So we need to understand God's vision for us. In Romans chapter 8, verse 29, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. This is so we will be like him. So that's the goal, to be like Christ. So understand that God has a desire for us to be like him. This is fundamental. So we understand that the fall occurred and it separated us from our Creator. And this is the key. The three great blessings were given to the original ancestors, to be fruitful, to multiply, to have dominion. But we were not able to accomplish any of them because we were not able to accomplish the first one. Because we were not able to have a relationship with God. That is fundamental to a mature spiritual person. Having a relationship, a connection with God. On that foundation, we were supposed to have a healthy relationship with our spouse. And on that foundation, we were supposed to have the ability to raise children in the image of God. So that was all destroyed when we lost our connection with God. So the whole idea of spiritual discipline is how do we, in our fallen state, get back to having that connection with God? So this is being quoted in several verses. The book of Hebrews. So St. Paul especially was a master of self-discipline. When you study St. Paul's life and his journey of faith, you see what kind of challenges he was up against and how much he trained himself in order to overcome those challenges. He likened his spiritual disciplining as a boxer, so that he was able to fend off crowds of hostile people. He was able to endure beating after beating after beating. We have no idea, in fact, of how much he went through because he doesn't really write so much about it. But we understand that the situation that he was up against in his era was pretty hostile. So, especially from his own Jewish brethren who were trying to save him from his transgressions by going off into following this heretic Jesus. So they were severely trying to help him by castigating him and by beating him, beating the devil out of him, so to speak. But of course he endured all that and went on to become this great disciple in a sense, even though he never met Jesus personally, but a great disciple nonetheless of Jesus. The spiritual disciplines, the means to godliness. So these are some of the disciplines we're going to be discussing in future sermons. Today's sermon is basically an introduction to the concept of why spiritual discipline is necessary. So the most important aspect of any spiritual discipline is its purpose. And that we've discussed already is the purpose of godliness. That's the goal. And God gives spiritual discipline that we might pursue Him. And many noteworthy Christians of the past are people that have endured or have practiced a lot of spiritual discipline. And you can study their life stories. They're incredible. Godliness comes through discipline. We have seen from 1 Timothy 4:7 that these are not an option. Apply your heart to instruction and your ear to words of knowledge. Okay, so that's a command. That's not a suggestion. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. That's Jesus himself telling his disciples what they should do. And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Take up his burden daily and follow me. So this is the problem, that many Christians, many people, many spiritual people of any religion or any discipleship are undisciplined. The result is a lack of maturity, a lack of power, a lack of fruit in our lives. Whitney, one of the authors I referred to in this talk, describes these people as being a mile wide and an inch deep. There are no deep channels of God in their life. They dabble and have a little knowledge but lack any depth. In the New Testament, the quotation, "Don't be a reed blowing in the wind," is similar to that. It's basically someone who just flows according to where the wind blows. Like a salacious politician, perhaps. Which way are the political winds blowing? Oh, forget what I said. I'm going this way. So don't be a mile wide and an inch deep. Many people will discipline their life to grow in other areas, sport, business, etc., but ignore spiritual disciplines and the sacrifice needed to grow and succeed. But remember, where does the gold lie? On the surface or deep within the earth? Go deep, young man. Go deep, young lady. So, there is a danger in neglecting the spiritual disciplines. Nothing was ever achieved without discipline. And many an athlete and many a man has been ruined because he abandoned discipline and let himself grow slack. Has anyone heard of the poet Coleridge? Okay, his is a tragic story. Let's study his as a case study. Wherever you are in the spirit world, Coleridge, I'm sorry. Coleridge is the supreme tragedy of undiscipline. Never did so great a mind produce so little. He left Cambridge University to join the army, but he left the army because, in spite of all his erudition, he could not rub down a horse. He returned to Oxford and left without a degree. He began a paper called The Watchman, which lived for 10 numbers and then died. It has been said of him, he lost himself in visions of work to be done, that always remained to be done. Coleridge had every poetic gift except one, the gift of sustained and concentrated effort. Remember the quote? 99%, 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Okay, so he lacked the 99%. But it's just one grit. It's basically summed up as grit, according to the researcher Duckworth. She studied school children, and she tried to figure out why is it that some kids are successful in school and others are not successful, and it wasn't relative to IQ. It came down to something she described as grit, just the gritty determination to keep trying and trying and trying. And they've measured this in different cultures. It seems to be a cultural thing. For instance, they've done this very cruel test to children where they give them a mathematical problem that cannot be solved. And they measure how long before the kid gives up. And they noticed that in places like South Korea and Japan, the kids just kept on trying and trying and trying until 1 hour was up, and they say, okay, stop. Just stop. Sit down. No, but wait. No, sit down. That's okay. And then in America, they did the same test, and the kids, after 5 minutes, are like, I can't do it. This is impossible. And so, that was the kind of average, of course. But, in a culture like in Asia, there is this understanding that you just got to keep trying and trying and trying and don't give up. And in this culture, somehow we lost that. At some point, we lost it. I mean, obviously, the founding fathers had it. The people who fought a revolutionary war against Britain had it. The people who laid the foundations for America and, expanded west, they had it. But then over the years, as we became more comfortable in our environment, we kind of lost it. And now we feel like, oh, everyone owes me something. They would owe you anything. But anyway, so this quality was definitely lacking in this unfortunate character, Coleridge. He had every poetic gift except one, the gift of sustained and concentrated effort. In his head and in his mind, he had all kinds of books, as he said himself, completed except for transcription. So I am on the eve, he said, of sending the press 2 octavo volumes, but the books were never composed outside of Coleridge's mind, because he would not face the discipline of sitting down to write them out. No one ever reached any eminence, and no one ever maintained it without discipline. We all have spiritual gifts. The question is, will we use them and bear fruit? So, again, the idea of discipline. Maybe the word discipline rings in your mind as like, a negative thing, But really, it's the gateway to freedom. Okay? There is freedom in embracing the spiritual disciplines. Richard Foster calls the disciplines the door to liberation. Okay? These disciplines produce liberty in our lives. Watch a gifted musician, and they can play anything. How? Because of all the years of disciplined practice, which produces such freedom. If you see any photos of Jimi Hendrix, it's very rare to see a photo of Jimi Hendrix without holding a guitar. He walked around, in his waking day, practicing guitar, meeting friends, sitting in cars, on his way to a practice, on his way back from a practice. He was playing the guitar, practicing constantly. And on a rock stage, he blew everyone away with his talent. But it wasn't just because he was born with the gift of playing a guitar. It came after years and years and hours of practice. Carlos Santana, another example. Elton Trueblood. We have not advanced very far in our spiritual lives if we have not encountered the basic paradox of freedom. Here it is, the basic paradox of freedom. That we are most free when we are bound. We are most free when we are bound. To one who would be an athlete, but who is unwilling to discipline his body by regular exercise and abstinence, is not free to excel on the field or the track. His failure to train rigorously denies him the freedom to run with the desired speed and endurance. With one concerted voice, the giants of the devotional life apply the same principle to the whole of life. Discipline is the price of freedom. And I would add, freedom is the reward of discipline. When I sit down and in my mind I want to play Beethoven on the piano, I can't. I'm not free. Why? Because I haven't disciplined myself to learn the piano. And this is, again, something that you'll see a lot of people from certain cultures teach their children. They teach them a musical instrument. Why? Because they want to have them, play in Carnegie Hall. Not necessarily. It's because they want to teach their kids discipline. Through learning a musical instrument, you have a definite idea of enduring, practice, making it perfect, and then finally succeeding. And there's a process that you can see. It's very rewarding. You can see, this is how I started out. I went through this time period and worked, and now I can play this piece. And it's definitely a very rewarding experience. But in the process of doing that, you start to understand, I wasn't able to go from A to B without discipline. So that's why teaching your kids a musical instrument is a very good way of helping them to understand this concept. So freedom and discipline are often considered mutually exclusive. In fact, one is the result or reward of the other. Consider the freedom of being able to quote the Bible, or spiritual sensitivity through fasting, or deliverance from self-centeredness through service and worship. We should remember such a process is not an overnight affair. There's no quick fixes to our problem as human beings. It is a lifelong process. And how I want to finish this off is with the words of the Rev Sun Myung Moon. So he talks about discipline a lot, and I just wanted to quote him because he rounds it off by really getting down to the core of it again and again and again, which is to love God, to relate to God. That is the purpose of discipline. If you love God and you love humanity, everything will be accomplished. If you cannot do it, your spiritual training will have been in vain. No matter how great a religion's spiritual discipline may be, if it does not know how to love God, humankind, and the whole universe, it will fail the test. And when you think of me, what preaching of mine comes to your mind? What am I trying to say to you? It is that religion came into existence in order to discipline the body due to the fall. Thus, all religions will eventually disappear. What is it that you need to do? You need to form families and a nation through which you can attend God. In other words, you need to fulfill the three great blessings. That is the ideal of creation. And that is how I would like to finish this sermon, by reminding us we are fallen, we are disconnected from God, we need to reconnect to God in order to accomplish our purpose of creation, and the only way we can achieve that is through practicing spiritual disciplines in our daily life. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Parents, our true Father, our Heavenly Father, our Heavenly Mother, thank you so much for guiding us, protecting us, helping us, nurturing us, raising us, your children, and never giving up on one day being able to accomplish the purpose of creation, which is to see the human family living at peace, in harmony, and progressively developing this world into one that is a beautiful world to live in, internally and externally. Thank you for maintaining this vision above us, despite the fact that we have, I'm sure, disappointed you time and time again. You never give up on us. You never gave up on us. And you continue to reach out to us. Help us to understand that, and help us to strengthen ourselves through spiritual disciplines to connect ourselves with you and to reach up to you. We thank you once again, and we offer this prayer through Christ our Lord, our Jew, and Amen. Thank you very much, and I just gave you some ideas of things to discuss in case you want to start talking about politics by default. Go back to this. Okay, thank you.